Hi, Love Bug. Welcome to the Naked Yoga Podcast. This podcast is all about incorporating bits and pieces of yogic philosophy and spirituality into your everyday life. I'm your host, Nika Okoli, a graduate student at Columbia University's Spirituality Mind-Body Institute. I'm also a yoga and meditation instructor at a little studio called Core Power Yoga. You may have heard of it. My mission here is to help you nourish your mind, body, and spirit connection. Each podcast episode will begin with a guided meditation, followed by the core of the episode pairing a spiritual concept with science. Lastly, each episode will end with a mindful closure, providing you with actionable steps you can do after listening to deepen your mind, body, and spirit connection. So, without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. I am so excited to be here. So happy that you're here, my little love bugs. Just feeling so abundant and joyous today. So for today's opening meditation, let's just get right on into it, shall we? Wherever you are, begin to empty out your lungs. Big inhale in and a breath out. Inhale and exhale. One more time. Inhale, fill all the way up. Hold at the top, sip in a little more air, and then let it go. Wonderful. Begin to breathe in a way that feels natural and comfortable to you. Noticing how you feel in your body today. And then I invite you to begin to soften. Maybe you release your tongue from the roof of your mouth, unclench your jaw, melt your shoulder blades down your spine, soften through your core, your thighs, your calves. Just finding time and space to feel good and to relax. I invite you to begin to think about your yogic journey. How did you get introduced to yoga? Was it a family friend? Was it innate curiosity? Just taking some time to reflect. I invite you now to think back to your first yoga class. How did you show up in the physical asana, the physical practice? I now invite you to think about your last yoga class and take some time just to notice how much you have grown as a yogi. What move did you think was impossible but now is a part of your yoga repertoire? Or how can you deepen your connection to your breath and quiet your mind in a way that seemed unsustainable in that first class? I invite you to ponder on how you've been able to reflect inward and really experience the yoga off of the mat as well. It's easy to compare ourselves to others who may be more flexible on the mat, but I want to provide a gentle reminder that the asana practice, the physical practice, is just one of the 8 limbs of yoga, and that all 7 of the other limbs don't actually happen on the mat and can happen off of your mat as well. I'm reminded of a quote from one of my teachers, Sumi. She said, "Those who are doing the most on the mat may be doing the least in their life." So I invite you now to let go of the need to compare your yogic journey to anyone else's, and to find gratitude in how far you've come as a yogi, and honestly just embrace that. I am so proud of you. Filling up your heart space now with a big inhale and an exhale. Twice more. Inhale and exhale. Last time, biggest inhale yet. Hold at the top, sip in a little more air, and then let it go. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. As always, if you want to take some time to journal and meditate and reflect before diving back in with us, I invite you to pause the podcast now. Otherwise, we will just dive right in. Okay, my loves, I am so beyond excited for today's episode because I'm actually going to be sharing with you guys some research that I did on yoga for one of my classes, Women in Mental Health at Columbia University. I took this class with Dr. Neuro, who a lot of people had mixed reviews. If I'm being honest, but I loved her, and I love that she gave us the freedom to kind of write the paper of our dreams. And I'm really proud of this paper. I honestly kind of want to put it on Amazon so you guys can buy it for $1 or something, and we can kind of chat about it together. You can kind of read everything I wrote. But essentially for my paper, I did a literature review on yoga and the power of yoga on women's mental health. While I did focus on women because it was a women's mental health class, I do think yoga in general is just such a healing practice for all genders and all bodies. So I do think some of this is applicable to men and gender non-conforming people as well. But before we get started, if you didn't check out the last episode 7 on the 8 limbs of yoga, I would highly recommend listening to that, and I'll leave it in the show notes below, because before we can really talk about yoga, you need to have a thorough understanding on what yoga is, if I'm being completely honest. And so I found in the West, while I was doing a lot of my literature review, a lot of the 8 limbs of yoga have been lost. So again, if this is your first time tuning in, listen to that episode, the 8 limbs of yoga. I go into a very deep dive on all of the limbs, but just as a brief recap, there are the yamas, the universal moral commandments, the niyamas, self-purification by discipline, or kind of outer change, if I'm being honest. Asana, the postures, that's the physical practice that we honestly do the most in the West. Then pranayama, the breath, that's included in some yoga classes. Honestly, I think most yoga classes do a really good job of including breath work and pranayama. The next we have pratya, which is kind of withdrawal from the outside world and really turning inward. Then we have dharana, which is concentration. So concentrating on the breath tends to be the easiest for people, but you can also concentrate on anything that's kind of internal. Then there's the dhyana, which is meditation. And then lastly, we have samadhi, which is the state of super consciousness that's brought about by becoming one with the universe. And honestly, your meditation practice, your dhyana, should hopefully eventually lead you to samadhi, but not everyone gets there. I mean, you have to be a pretty advanced yogi. Honestly, the gurus are the ones that have reached the state of samadhi. So that was a really brief overview. Those are the 8 limbs of yoga. again, if you want a deeper dive, please listen to last week's episode. But I want to kind of continue on this episode focusing on like how we kind of lost it, the 8 limbs of yoga in the West. I think primarily because yoga is kind of viewed as like a Pilates or like cycling class. Like it's really viewed as like a form of exercise here, at least from my context being an American. And so America ruins everything, but I digress. I really think when people kind of arrive in the studio and they really just want to work out, that's when we get kind of like these, just like, you're missing it, right? It's like coming to a party and like not wanting to talk to anyone or not wanting to like fully engage and like fully be there. And honestly, I don't even think it's like people's fault. I think the way a lot of studios, or at least the studios that I have been a part of, kind of package it, and I think it's also kind of like a supply and demand thing too, right? Like people are coming to work out, so then we provide them a really great workout. When you're doing the physical asana practice, you really can't tap into like the yamas or the niyamas. While I do try to thread those into my classes by using themes, it's not a didactic course. People aren't coming to a yoga class to sit down and learn about all 8 limbs of yoga. They're coming to a yoga class to like move their bodies. And when you're in the physical asana, it is a great place to kind of weave in like dharana, like concentration. And then you always end with a savasana, a dana, a meditation. But it's hard. It's really hard to see if people are getting it. I think especially when men take my classes as well, it's like they have this urge to like do the postures correctly, quote unquote, like as if they're gonna like earn a prize for having like a perfect like dancer's pose or something. And I'm just like, it's not about that. Just breathe and relax. So while I was doing my literature review and looking at all the different research projects and research studies that involved yoga, one of the hugest things that I kind of had to highlight at the very beginning is that a lot of yogic interventions don't include all 8 components of yoga or all 8 limbs of yoga. So this means that essentially when we're looking at the benefits or even the contradictions or regressions within these studies that study the power of yoga on women's mental health, it's not truly a holistic view of the full intensity of the yogic practice, because a lot of them only include the asana practice, maybe a little bit of pranayama, maybe a little bit of asparparya. Did I mention that one? Or savadya, self-study. So that being said, grain of salt with everything. Let's dive into the impact of yoga on women's mental health. So the first subject that I want to start with is the power of yoga on body image. And so if you're not familiar with Fredrickson, she is an amazing positive psychology researcher and also like a very feminist researcher as well. She's like iconic, honestly, a legend. But essentially, she was one of the first researchers to really solidify objectification theory. And so objectification theory suggests that women and girls are socialized to value the observer's view of their bodies over their own. This is an internalization of the male gaze called self-objectification. And self-objectification is prevalent in the lives of women and girls and can lead to a lot of self-destruction, such as eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and obesity. And so a lot of adolescent girls and, kind of women induce like, oh, it makes me so sad to even say this, but in order to conform to society's beauty standards, a lot of them will develop like anorexia, bulimia, or like compulsive eating disorder. And it all stems from the core of a disconnection from the body, right? Like you're no longer connected to your body in a way that you feel like your body is yours. You more so feel like your body belongs to the male gaze or the observer or whoever is looking at you. And so you don't identify with your body. So you begin to engage in self-harm. And yoga is such a powerful intervention for women who experience these issues because the core of yoga is a mind, body, spirit connection, which makes me super excited to talk about this study. Well, I actually have a couple of studies that we can talk about, but I will talk about this one first. So Donges, Gordon, Bauman, and Perry asked the question, does yoga help college-age women with body image dissatisfaction feel better about their bodies? So they surveyed women between the ages of 18 to 30 with little to prior experience with yoga. They all had normal eating behavior, so none of that diseases of despair that we mentioned earlier, so like anorexia, compulsive eating disorder, bulimia, etc. And they had no other psychological mood disorders. So out of 75 participants, 37 were randomly selected for a yoga intervention, while 38 were waitlisted as a control group. And the results are like really kind of great. Sorry, I'm getting like so excited. So the results of the study, sorry guys, I literally had to take a break because I felt like my inner nerd was just like beaming out of me. But essentially, the women who were in the yoga intervention group saw greater post-test improvements in several facets of body image dissatisfaction than those who were in the waitlisted / control group. And they also found that the power of yoga is compounding, right? So that means the more classes you take, the more benefits that you're receiving. So the women that had the greatest statistically significant improvement across areas of body image were the women that actually took 20 plus classes. And I believe that this was an 8-week study, maybe 12 weeks, but I digress. That's not even what is exciting about this. The exciting part is that this is a compounding factor, and that the more you kind of get into yoga, the more yoga gives to you. How great is that? I want to move over to the next study that was actually an Australian study, and it's titled Overeating is Not About the Food. Women describe their experience of a yoga treatment program for binge eating. So in this study, it was 25 women between the ages of 26 and 65 years old. This study was so reading it, amazing. But all these women had a binge eating disorder. So unlike the last study that we just looked at, these women did have a psychological disorder, binge eating in particular. And the yoga intervention consisted of 1 hour of yoga for 12 weeks. And the study was really good because they included like a pranayama practice. So they did 5 minutes of breathing exercises, and then they did 10 minutes of yoga nidra, which we haven't talked about yoga nidra in this podcast really, but we did do an episode, I don't remember which one, where I opened us up with a little yoga nidra, and it's great. But essentially, yoga nidra is like a form of yoga in which you're really connecting with your body and like finding deep relaxation within your body. So like literally mentally engaging with every part of your body. So like envision your toes, connect with your toes, relax your toes. Can you wiggle your toes? And then going up like from your toes to like the base of your foot, to your ankle, to your calf, and just slowly kind of progressing that way. And then this study was actually also really good because they did a self-study portion, which is Savadhyaya, one of the 8 limbs of yoga. So this study actually incorporated the most of the limbs that I found in any of the studies thus far. And out of the 25 women that participated in the study, 20 of them elected to keep personal journals to document their experience, which was the catalyst of phenomenological data because the scientists were able to actually read through the journal entries of the 20 women, and they found this model that can act as a framework to provide yogic interventions for women who are battling binge eating disorders. And I think it'd be really, really cool to replicate this for women who have anorexia or bulimia, because essentially the core of the issue is a disconnection from the body. So one of the women shared in one of her journals, we have these quotes, guys. It's so rich. So one woman shared, "I hate what I'm doing to myself. I recognize it as punishment and in mutilation, but my intellect and emotions aren't communicating with each other. The urge to overeat is overriding all other considerations, even vanity. And then the same woman, like closer to the end of the program, she said, I feel peaceful and hopeful. I am eating like a normal person, enjoying what I eat and not obsessing like usual. I'm really enjoying eating fresh fruits and vegetables, grainy breads, and soy products. I'm cooking regularly and I'm not currently afraid of feeling hungry. Like, can we get a slow clap? Like, what? Oh, like 180. Like, to go from like, I hate what I'm doing to myself to like, I'm no longer afraid of feeling hungry. It's like yoga allowed these women to feel better about their bodies because they were able to connect to their bodies in such a more intricate way. And this was a trend across all 20 of the journals. Another one of the women said, yoga makes me feel better rather than it needs to be done in order to be better. So this woman was really going into the catalyst, not catalyst, that's a bad word, but not a bad word, but not the word that I wanted to use. Anyways, she was getting into the crux of the issue that we typically, when we have like people with larger bodies and exercise like places, it's typically like, okay, you have to do this so you can be a better person and fit into this body type and be this beauty standard, and not so much about like, let's do this so you can feel better about yourself, feel more comfortable in yourself, and like truly just love your body for whatever size that it is. And I think that's what's so different. Like, that's truly what makes yoga so different from every other exercise, because it's truly not about what you look like. It's all about what you feel like and how you can connect to your spirit through your body, which is honestly a gift from your ancestors, that it's carrying you through your current human experience. And then lastly, for the study, I wanted to talk about the framework that the scientists were able to create. So connection versus disconnection. So the changing body from the point of view of the women who had that binge eating disorder, they felt like force versus ease. So phase 1 was like a disconnection and estrangement from the body, right? And the women were trying to rectify that as food being a comforter or either food being an isolator. So either way, they're trying to kind of like get into their body by engorging their body, right? So as a result, in this phase, women were feeling full physically, but also empty spiritually, right? Then we move into the second phase, which is a weak connection to the grounded body, right? And this weak connection was really kind of massaged through the yoga practice, right? So now we're having experimentation. So like, hold this warrior two, settle in, notice how you feel. Do you feel it in your hips? Can you reach your arms a little bit further, north and south? Like all that fun things we like to kind of settle in when we're in these different asana practices, right? And so as the women are experimenting and kind of finding their connection to their body, we move into phase 3, which is a strong connection to the body. And this is an empowered body, right? And this strong connection to their body allows them to feel satiation. So feeling satisfied from their meals in a way that they hadn't been able to feel before, because these women weren't overeating because they were hungry or not hungry. They were overeating because they had like this deep spiritual hunger inside of them to connect to their bodies or to disconnect from society in a way that was resulting in self-harm. So I think this is really cool, and I kind of want to see if this study can be replicated for women who have anorexia or bulimia, because I think honestly, in my eyes, the core of the issue is the same. There is a lot more studies that I reviewed in this literature review, and I did want to get to another topic, but I think for the sake of time, I'm trying to give you guys shorter episodes. We are going to wrap it up here for today and transition into our mindful closure. Also, if you found this as fascinating as I did, please feel free to leave me a comment on my latest Instagram post, or I think I'm on YouTube now, so maybe you can leave a comment there or what have you. Just let me know if you want a part 2, because I did want to talk about the powerful community aspect of yoga as well, but honestly, we'd probably be here for another 20 minutes. So that being said, now let's transition into our mindful closure. And for our mindful closure for today, it's going to be short, it's going to be sweet, it's going to be simple. I want to ask you to take some time to reflect on how your personal yoga practice has changed your life. I know for me, I feel like yoga was like a spiritual intervention. I tell the story a lot in meditation classes that I teach, and also the yoga classes that I teach too, but when I got into my undergraduate university, I was really disappointed because my university did not have a cheer team. And at that point in my life, I had been cheering my entire high school career. And then at my graduation party, a family friend gifted me a yoga mat. And that was kind of the start of my yoga journey. I was 17 at the time, and I have been doing yoga quite regularly ever since. So I am a 12-year experienced yogi, which is kind of incredible to say, but I hope that inspires you to kind of reflect more on your journey, and just to know that sometimes when things aren't working out the way we want them to, it's working out for something better to kind of manifest in our lives. So I love you, my little love bugs, so much. I will see you guys in the next episode, and take care until then. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Naked Yoga Podcast. My name is Nika, and if you want more content from me, you can follow me on Instagram or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Nourish Nika. This is a completely independent podcast. Yes, I write the scripts, record, and edit the podcast all by myself. Therefore, any support you could give, like a share, a comment, maybe leaving a little review on Apple Podcast or wherever you might be listening, would go a very long way and warm my little itty bitty heart. Thank you so much once again for listening, my love bug. I will see you in the next episode.